Hello everybody, welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the brand new films The Best Christmas Pageant Ever and Heretic from A24 get released. The big surprise of this weekend is The Best Christmas Pageant Ever seemingly came out of nowhere from Lionsgate of all places to get the number 2 spot, doing much better than what initial anticipation and initial projections were going into this weekend. So clearly they've got themselves a movie that, though it is not set to break any records by any means, is definitely a better performer. Compared especially to all of the other films that they've had over the last couple of years. Whereas the film Heretic from A24 continues the tradition of the A24 brand of being able to put out films for relatively little cost and be able to do pretty well. This being one of the more unique ones in that it is getting a full wide release here, whereas most of A24's films tend to get a very weird release schedule, getting released maybe in a few theaters and then expanding from there, trying to get the natural organic word of mouth going. Sometimes it works pretty well. Other times, I think it's questionable as far as just how much impact it has or how different it ultimately would be had they just released it just wide in the first place versus the initial kind of a creeping release. But that all being said, Heretic having a pretty strong release, especially for the kind of film that it is. And so shout out to A24 for continuing to be one of the very few studios to be very consistent as far as how much they spend on films, and also to do so in a way to make their money back relatively easily. So we'll talk about these things, and let's go ahead then and just dive right into those numbers. Also talk about Venom: The Last Dance's numbers too, which is the film we'll start off with first here, because a 37% drop after 3 weeks of release is very good, right? This film was able to drop in that, 40-50% range last weekend, which for a film of its size was able to therefore hold quite well. Dropping now into the 30s percentage range is also quite good, losing only 226 screens. And though this movie is not going to be breaking any records at the domestic box office, it is still doing quite well domestic and international. Domestic more so comparison to its opening weekend, and international just again is really where it's making the vast majority of its funds. It is seemingly slowing down a little bit based off of at least the current week's numbers as of the recording of this video, but it is still doing well enough to where I think that you could argue somewhere between $450-500 million worldwide is likely going to be where this film ends up, which would put it just about on par roughly with the last film, Venom 2, that came out just a few years ago. The real surprise, as I mentioned in the beginning, is The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, making $11.1 million. Now, this film did have a projected cost of around $20 million, I believe, and at that kind of a cost, $11.1 million isn't all that great. Now, because this film came in and kind of came out of nowhere to jump into that number 2 spot when all of the prognosticators did not have that anywhere close to being the place that this film was going to end up, is definitely, I think, a good sign for it. And so if it has good word of mouth, if it is being well received, which it seems like it is based off of the fact it had an abysmal opening night. I think it opened around $500,000 in its opening premiere. Was Heretic obviously, took most of the money there on that Thursday. In fact, let's go ahead and pull up those daily chart numbers just to give you an idea, because obviously we've got the Sunday numbers Saturday, and here's the Thursday, right? So Venom got the number 1 spot at 1.6 million. Heretic's debut was 1.2 million, which is about on par with, I think, most A24 releases these days. And then Best Christmas Pageant was all the way down, right? So you have second, third, fourth, fifth place in its opening, making $500,000. Now, obviously a family film, so not really the time in which family films tend to do best. But this film saw a huge increase, going up to $5 million on its opening Friday, and then dropped from that position, dropping to $3.3 million in its opening Saturday performance there. And then on Sunday has consistently been around $2.8 million, and so another 15% drop off there. So something must have happened on Friday to lead to that, I think, bigger than expected opening day performance after such little fanfare in its overall opening. But hey, kudos to them for being able to pull this one out, because there's definitely a lot stronger start. Lionsgate has had a lot of trouble the last couple of years financially. Almost all of their films have been financial failures to a huge degree, and even ones that have performed a little bit better down the line because the costs have been just enough for them to not be able to justify their costs. It hasn't been all that great. Now with Lionsgate specifically, they are much more of a distributor in a lot of these films, and so the question ultimately is how much money do they actually get back, because they are taking on some costs dealing with the marketing, distribution of the film, and there of course are the cost that they're going to be receiving from the studios that are producing the film in order to bring on and take on this task. And so regardless of that, though, all of the films that have come under the Lionsgate name specifically have been, for the most part, pretty disappointing, at least from a financial standpoint. $11.1 million, still very, very good, much better than anyone would have expected. Coming in as a number 3 spot is Heretic from A24, film I actually am pretty intrigued by. I actually want to see, because it deals more so with that psychological horror thriller aspect, which I enjoy quite a bit. Don't like all the demonic horror crap that comes out in most things these days, but when it comes to the psychological thrillers, definitely enjoy those. Seems to have some commentary on religion, so I'm a little hesitant there, because obviously I'm very proud of my Catholic faith, but in general, I could see why this could be a film that would probably interest a lot of people, because discussions on religion, even though we try to avoid them at all costs, tend to lead to a lot of discussions after the fact. So, hey, A24 coming out with another film here, doing very well. And again, as of the last time I checked, I don't believe Heretic had a updated budget for the film. We'll go ahead and just do that live right now, because why not? Right now, worldwide at $13 million. So let's go ahead and look this up in the Googles, look it up in the Wikipedias, and let's see. Yes, so still no reported budget as of right now. A24, though, tends to cost between, for a film like this, probably 10 to 20 million if I had to guess. So definitely a strong start for the movie, because the kind of movie A24 tends to release does much better down the line. So similar to what the best Christmas pageant ever has with a strong opening, in this specific case, I would not be surprised if Heretic takes the number 2 spot when the actuals come in for the weekend, either Monday or Tuesday of this week. But that being said, they're very similar. They're on the same page right now as far as how much they need to make their money back, or roughly the same amount, whereas I think Heretic has the advantage just because of A24's typical release schedule and how their films do down the line. The Wild Robot, $6.6 million here, 11% drop after it had increased its amount last weekend. So the fact that it had a huge increase, right? The fact that it dropped, raised any amount, I think it was like 13% increase last weekend, to now drop only 11% from that increase is just very impressive. So this continues to hold very well down the line, still out at over 3,000 screens, so just adding now to its overall profits. Kudos to them for making yet another, once again, I'll have to say, rather, that this film is definitely a winner. Smile 2, number 5 spot there, 26% drop, 416, so still overall making money, still not as successful as the first film, but definitely still doing well, doing what it needed to do. Conclave holding around as well, though it had a very slow opening weekend, and so these strong drops and they're increasing the theater counts is good. However, the film still has a ways to go before breaking even. Anora increasing to 851, adding 851 screens. My head is all over the place today. 36% increase, very good numbers there. And then the film here, in its second week of release, dropping 50%. For a movie like that had a low opening, that's not good. This film right now projected to be a pretty sizable flop, probably in the $50 to $100 million territory. So I can't say I'm that surprised, based off of people in the film not being those actors that really draw people out anymore. And from what I've heard about the movie, it seems it's much more of a concept than an actual story. The story really isn't all that there. The concept is why you would actually want to go see the film, and that's just not enough in today's world to drive people out to go and see it, especially when you're going to spend a crazy amount of money for a film like this that should have cost a lot less. We Live in Time from A24 continuing to hold, dropping from 1,000 screens, so dropping quite a bit. But this film obviously did the most of its business that it was going to be doing. Terrifier 3 still hanging out in the top 10. Still impressive, right? Regardless of whether you have any interest in that film or not, the fact that it's done as well as it has as a non-rated film, getting distributed by this brand new startup company, which is directly connected with the production company of Terrifier 3. Basically, they did it all on their own. It's just very impressive. There were a couple other new releases in Elevation, which was very limited, so won't be covering that because it's very hard to cover those types of releases. Vertical Entertainment, $1.1 million there. Overlord, The Sacred Kingdom, same story, even less theaters, $1.1 million there. Going to worldwide totals, Venom The Last Dance, as of the recording of this video, is at 3.6 times its budget. Now, on paper, you would think, okay, it's 2.5 times its budget, it's 3 times its budget. That's a win, right? Well, here's the big problem. First, that budget being reported of 110, I've seen other reports of it being 120. And so because the trades, because all of those, different prognosticators out there are putting the official number around 120, that's the number that I am using for that. So that obviously brings it down quite a bit. But also the biggest problem this movie has, and we've talked about it now for several weeks, is it's making the vast majority of its money internationally, and especially in the Chinese market. So it's getting a lot less back return on investment, which means it's going to make a lot more. It has to make a lot more than 3 times its budget if it's going to be able to actually break even. That's the story right now. I do think it's going to get to that point, but as of this weekend, it actually has not reached that point yet, at least according to the current metrics that we have. Some internationals could always be delayed, but as of right now, as of the recording of this video, that has not happened. The best Christmas pageant ever, $11.1 million, The poster does not look like anything I had interest in, but apparently people do. So again, kudos to them for being able to do much better than I think anyone would have anticipated. The film Heretic with the blueberry pie candle. I've seen enough reviews of the film to know what that is, what that's referring to. Definitely a movie I have interested in watching, though. $13.5 million, pretty strong start for this A24 film. The Wild Robot, $219 million. This film will easily get to $300+ million, with an end result probably between 3 and 350, depending on how it does in Japan, and that won't happen until sometime in February. And then Smile 2, rounding off those top 10 numbers there, $123.6 million. Sorry, the top 5, $123.6 million. So again, still doing very, very well. Let's go over the charts because we love charts here on OMB Reviews. We can make projections on the new film, second weekend film here, as that is the only film that's going into its second weekend. As you can see, $9.6 million as of the recording of this video means that the film is going to project to make between $13 and $19 million for a budget of $50 million. Again, not towards the higher end of budgets, but still enough. This film then is going to lose somewhere between $66 and $63 million. So obviously we're talking here about a very, precarious situation. I think that they're going to be in a lot of, let's just say a lot of dire straits. Like that's a best case versus worst case scenario in this instance, making only $187,000 international, 9.5 domestic. Right now it's at 70 million in the red, so probably going to end somewhere between 50 and 70 million when all is said and done, as it's just not making any money. The best Christmas pageant ever at $11 million is now 23.8 million in the red. So we'll see how this film does down the stretch. There are a lot of films that are coming up. We've got obviously Thanksgiving's box office coming up, the weekend before Thanksgiving. There's a lot of movies coming out. So things are about to get a lot more crowded. It's been very, very quiet. Another slow weekend this weekend. So that's going to start to change. Will this film be able to hang around? Again, that opening day makes me think maybe it'll have a little bit of staying power, but if I had to guess, because of those drops from Saturday to Sunday, I don't think it's going to be a huge moneymaker, but will it be able to make enough to maybe justify its release and guarantee it makes some money in the back end, right, when it gets released onto streaming and VOD? Maybe. Again, they didn't spend a whole lot of money on this movie, and as of right now, still doesn't have too much left to go there. Venom 3 is currently at $11 million in the red. So yeah, this film, very, very close to hitting its break-even point. Has not done that yet, though. It looks like there were some internationals that did update between the last time I checked this chart, because it was at negative 30 million when I checked it just about 45 minutes ago. So again, very, very close. It's going to hit that mark. Now I can say for sure by the end of next weekend, even with more competition on the way very, very soon, it is going to be obviously still holding well domestic, international, and it's going to break $400+ million even before then. So still looking like a movie that's going to cap out probably somewhere around $500 million if I had to guess based on these numbers right now, and it's going to make a pretty decent amount of profit for its budget. The Smile 2 continuing to add to its overall profits. The Apprentice still a flop, Piece by Piece still a flop, though this is now available on VOD, I believe. Terrifier 3 adding to its profits, and The Wild Robot, $18.5 million, continuing to add to its profits, going to end probably in the area of, I would say, between $30 to $50 million net profit. So again, kudos to them, and I'm sure they will have a plethora of stuff to make financially in the VOD marketplace, amongst others. So those are the numbers currently as they stand. What are y'all's thoughts? Have you seen the best Christmas pageant ever? Have you seen Heretic? I will get that added onto the chart by the time of our next box office preview, because I'll have that up on Thursday or Friday of this week, and hopefully we'll have a budget for Heretic, but I typically are a lot more slow adding movies like that when I don't have a budget to work with yet, because ultimately it's going to be a lot of guesswork at that point. So let me know your thoughts about that or anything else I mentioned here in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, allow that fire button over on Aussie, smash the rumble button as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, a blessed Sunday, and as always, God bless. now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my people on Patreon, Father Luca Illich and Miss Martin Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Martin Muses. Also to my Subscribestar people, Matt317. Check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Matt317. And also to the K-Man. Check out his website, xtheboundaries.co. And lastly to my YouTube member, Mr. Roy. Shout out to you, good sir. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to a plethora of other things. You get your name listed at the end of every live stream and video, like you saw in those names that came up before this video started. And also access to a giveaways channel that I host over on the Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Steelbooks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also, I have an exclusive podcast that I hold at least once a month, and it's always a good time, and you get extra bonus content with that also. So if any of that sounds interesting, again, check out that top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing, and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.